All right.
The 12 different record buttons.
That's right. Things you have to do to get a YouTube podcast going.
We made it this far.
That's right.
We have 7 subscribers. Thank you, lovely 7 individuals who choose to see notifications for this every time we release a new episode.
It's very nice. And I actually got some feedback from one of our viewers about a name for the podcast.
Oh my goodness.
Although I don't think she was very confident in it.
Okay.
But she said the first thing that comes to mind when I see you guys is how mellow you are. I was like, oh, we could call it mellow with Stefan and Mike or something. I don't know.
Getting mellow.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah. That is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what if I get a brain tumor and then I become like manic later and then it's just,
it's not going to work then.
It's not going to work anymore.
It's not going to work. Yeah. So we can't.
Yeah, that's a risky name. That is risky.
But thanks for the idea.
Yep. Throw those ideas at us all the time.
Please.
We'll knock them down one by one.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do, right? Kind of freelancing.
That is right. Yeah.
Working for ourselves. Where should we start?
Anywhere.
At the beginning?
At the end.
Yeah.
I died.
How did you get started? How did you start your own business? I'm interested in that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll try to do the shorter version. Essentially I started freelancing because I was fired from my last job. And so obviously you need work, and I was in a field that freelance graphic design. I was moving into web design. Freelance was really, really common. So that's really it. I mean, I was like, okay, instead of looking for another job, I'll take this work. I think a buddy of mine who had his own business threw me some work because I told him, hey, I'm available.
Okay.
And then I found another small little consulting firm that was doing web design that needed someone to help them because they're only like a husband and wife team, and they wanted somebody to help. They kind of took me under their wing. Gene and Paul at Orlando Website Design. Thank you, Gene and Paul. Miss you guys. Haven't seen them in a little while, but they helped me, just threw me some work, and then I built my website. Was found on search engines at some point, and then just started collecting clients.
It was probably really good timing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I kind of felt like the whole thing was an accident.
Okay.
Like I kind of backed into it as opposed to I'm going to start a business.
Right.
Because I never thought like I wanted to start a business. I never thought, I should do like a little consulting company. Freelance, yeah, I could see that scenario, but it wasn't something where I was like, I really want to manage people.
Right.
That's my dream.
Yeah. Who wants to do that?
Because it wasn't my dream. It's still not my dream.
People, they're the worst.
They are.
That's what people say.
Hell is other people.
That's right.
I've got a little notebook that says that on the cover. I don't know why it says that.
Well, why not?
Exactly. So that's kind of my story, or at least how I got started. I moved when I got into the industry. So I went to Valencia, 2-year degree, graphic design. The web was kind of burgeoning at that point, getting bigger. So I think there were 2 classes on web design.
Right.
So from there, I learned really everything on my own, which is totally possible. And that got me rolling. But the first job I had was with a professor, and I was laid off from that job because in this industry, if one of their major clients is cut, then your job is gone.
Yeah, that's
it goes with it. The second job I had, the same thing happened.
Oh,
And then
wow.
the third job I had, I went to this web design company, small company. They all worked out of one of the owner's homes.
Hmm.
We all worked out of one of the owner's homes. If you're listening, I hope you guys are doing great. But it was just not a good fit for me. It was like oil and water type of scenario. So
Hmm.
they ceremoniously let me go. And I was like, well, I can't do any worse if I did this on my own. I couldn't do any worse. You know?
Right.
So that's how it all began. How about you?
Okay. Well, for me, I was 11 years into working for a decent sized organization, and I got in at the right time. Like, it was a really great office. It was a really great group of people. I never really wanted to work in an office setting. Like, it always turned me off. When I was like 10 or 12, I went with my dad into his office, and it seemed like it was like a never ending just sea of cubicles. And I thought, my goodness, what a nightmare to have to come to that every single day. But after 11 years, I was just a little burned out of just having so many projects going all the time and not being able to really do a lot creatively. You kind of get into like a formulaic kind of thing where we have to get this done. There were some projects that were really good, that were, you know, creative, that we could work on, and I got to travel a lot, which was really nice.
That is cool.
But then my wife changed careers, and so we relocated from California back home for me to Florida, and I was able to take some work with me from my old job. So that's how I kind of started my one person business, and have kept going and tried to find new clients. I need to find some new clients, like everybody.
New clients, if you're listening,
That's right.
Mike can be contacted at.
Second half of the year, I have some free time. But that's about it. But it was the change from like working 8 to 5 every single day with extra time, you know, whenever it was needed, to making my own hours has been tremendous. The one thing that maybe surprised me the most going from like an 8 to 5 office setting to keeping my own hours is how much more productive I am. When
really?
I don't have to be there at 8, and I, you know, don't have to be there until 5. I don't know why, but I think part of it is random kind of meetings, scheduled meetings, of course, go way down when you go from like a big organization just working for yourself.
Right.
And just kind of random drop-ins.
Yep.
Don't happen. So I mean, I find that like 4 hours, I can get done what I would get done in 8 hours.
Oh yeah.
Easy. Maybe even more than that.
And I think that number is the estimated actual work time that most people put in at the office. It's like 3 hours.
I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally believe that.
So, I mean, with this 40-hour work week, we could cut in half and be just as productive and so much happier.
Oh yeah. Easy.
That's for another podcast.
It is. Yeah. Oh man. But it seems like with a lot of people, with a lot of freelancers, and both of us too, it's kind of who you know, right? You get your jobs from contacts in the industry. Or did you get
100%.
random? Did you get any random jobs early on?
It was kind of a mix. I think in the very beginning, it was definitely from people I knew, and they helped me get started. And then after I had some level of clientele, you know, I think the word of mouth scenario kind of helps a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But being found on search engines actually is the key to get those random jobs. For me, it was anyway.
Okay.
So if people were looking for a local web designer here in Central Florida, you know, I would be one of those options. It's nothing that I really care about right now. What I've done, I'd say in the last 5 years, if not more, is just take care of a set of clients that I've had for a long time. And I guess there's some risk in that because sometimes clients sell their business, or, they'll do something different or whatever the case is. And I might lose a client that way that I've had for a long time. That's happened to me a couple times.
Yeah.
But the thing that I always hated was finding clients. And as I grew my team to it was still small, but we were 7 people, including me, that became my entire job.
Just finding clients.
Just finding clients.
Oh,
because
my goodness.
I had to obviously keep everyone, keep the machine running. And so the purpose of the machine became just to feed the machine.
Right.
And that was like an emotional downward spiral.
That sounds terrible.
And maybe it's because I didn't have a grand vision, because I kind of backed into this whole thing anyway. And so perhaps that was it. I could see that being a side effect of not really having a strong, here's the direction we're moving. But I gave up on that. I gave up on having a large team. Now it's just me and one developer, Glenn. Glenn, thanks for being with me so long. And it's so much happier because I get to do some of the work, which is what I actually like doing, like designing and stuff like that, and still get all the benefits of being freelance or feeling like it's freelance and making my own hours and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. For me, the hardest part is finding new clients. Once I'm working with someone, like it always seems to work out well.
Right.
And there's no issues, but actually cause I'm really bad at selling myself and like talking about myself and marketing, basically. I'm really bad at marketing. So
that's
it's
what they call that.
Yeah. Apparently. I don't know. I've heard of it.
Yeah. I don't think I'm very good at that at all. Or just it becomes such a chore. Like that's the 30% that I really don't like at all. So I don't like gravitate toward it and try to figure it out and want to make it the best possible. I try to avoid it.
Right. Exactly.
It's not very good for the bottom line, but
Yeah. Money's not everything.
Well, I mean, you joke, but that's kind of what I decided when I was like, I'm just going to shrink back down to smaller. And the funny thing is, I was doing such a terrible job at sales that there were times where my small little company made more with fewer people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When we had more. And it's simply because, salaries are your biggest expense when you have a consulting company, a service-based business. It's a people-generated business. So when I had less of those salaries to pay, the profit went up. Clearly you can't do the same amount of work, but it just showed how inefficient at times we were running because I wasn't probably very good at sales.
How would you do that? How would you try and find like new clients? Would it just be cold calls or would you?
I couldn't do the cold call thing. So I relied heavily on people coming to me from search engines, word of mouth.
Okay.
So it was a lot. I just hit the easy button on a lot of that. I didn't do a lot of outreach myself. I didn't do like networking events and things like that because I just didn't really like to.
Yeah.
So people would come to me and ask for specific, hey, I've got a project. Could you bid this for us? And that's how we would get our clients.
Okay. I tried for a few years. I tried to do like networking events in LA and go to like industry stuff and documentary meetups. And I just, for whatever reason, like I couldn't get in. It felt like either you were in the club or you were not in the club. And maybe that's just me, but it just felt, And so eventually I kind of gave up on
Well, I mean, the networking event, if it was a specific, like I'm sure LA, it's going to be very different than here. But my experience with a networking event here, and we're in Central Florida, is like it was me. There were some realtors, some insurance salesmen. That's like the quintessential networking event that it never felt, it just, I don't know. It didn't make it, it wasn't the right place for me to try to find the kind of client that I wanted.
Right.
And I personally spent a lot of time trying to sell a service that nobody wanted to buy.
That's going to be tough. It's like me. I mean, I make movies that nobody wants to watch.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is becoming the podcast that nobody wants to listen to.
Right. Quickly. That's interesting.
We've got a history of this. That's at some point.
For me, for the LA stuff I would go to, it was a lot of screenings. Like there would be a lot of screenings of stuff before, like documentaries before they would be on air, before they would go out to theaters. And then there would be like a happy hour afterwards. Kind of a thing. And so you would try and you would meet interesting people and everybody was nice, but it felt like everyone had their little circle, their people that they went to, and beyond that, if you couldn't break into that, which I didn't, you were not in.
Yeah.
So it's probably like tough. That in most industries.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one, if I can tell an awkward story. We had Moby, who makes great music, and who, I'm not sure if he still has this, but he used to have a site called Moby Gratis, which was amazing. He had a bunch of his music that you could use as long as you weren't using it to make money.
Oh.
Like you could get a license to use that music. And so we used that for a fundraiser for a film that we made in Haiti after the earthquake.
Oh.
And I was at an event and he was there.
Oh, nice.
And me and the guy who made the film with me, we went up to him. I was like, hey, we used your music for Movie Gratis. It was amazing. Thanks for doing that. It's so cool. Like nothing. He seemed very like uncomfortable.
Oh, really?
And kind of, said thanks, and got away from us as quick as he could. Which
sounds like me at a networking event.
I know, right? I as an introvert, I totally understand.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, it left us feeling very awkward.
That is strange.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite part about being a freelancer? Like, what do you like about it since you've been doing this for a couple of years now?
I think that especially on bigger projects, that I can take my time a little bit more with it is the big thing. I don't feel the sense of rush that I used to before. And I think being able to take a little bit more time actually makes me a lot better and a lot more efficient, especially with editing. I don't know why, but maybe just the ability to let my mind process stuff and kind of work it out before I have to sit down and tackle it just helps me. That's probably it for me. Yeah, that and wearing shorts and t-shirts most days.
Exactly.
How about you?
I think, from the personal perspective, setting my own hours is pretty nice, but all that really means is I can run an errand in the middle of the day, and I don't have to really check in with anyone or things like that. So that kind of flexibility is great. But I tend to keep the same hours really every day.
Yeah. Which
I think having a team member help me, that just helps kind of formalize our work time and whatnot. But I think the nicest thing about it has been I get to work directly with a company who's paying me for my service. And so I don't have to rely on someone else to communicate for what we are doing.
Right.
And they can hear it directly from me. And so it just allows me to describe, I think, the work that I'm doing and the effect it's going to have and all that stuff the way I think it should be described. And that's been really nice. And I think that's why I like to do some of the work myself as well. Maybe I just like having that fine level of control over, here's exactly what we're doing and why and how it should be done. It just makes me feel like I'm contributing something of value, or at least my voice is heard, or I can go to the client and fight for what I think should be done directly.
Right.
That I love. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's nice. Do you find, so when you fight for what you think should be done, do you have to pick and choose your battles like me?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's times where I'll lean on a client hard to get them to see something that I see in a specific way. But I definitely don't want to do that over and over, because then I'm just, the guy that's not easy to work with.
Right.
When it comes to doing something. So I think, and the big antidote to that is just to listen to, where they're coming from and try to see them for where they're at.
Yeah.
But I try to have as much backup information to support why I suggest something as possible. And if I don't know, I'll say, I don't know. I'm kind of guessing, but this is my intuition says this, and this is why, and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's very similar for me.
It can be really tricky.
Yeah.
One more thing, and then I want to hear what you're thinking there. But in the beginning, like if I'm doing a interface design, I would do maybe 2 or 3 different versions of it, because I thought a client wanted to see multiple ways of doing something.
Right.
But inevitably they would pick the one that I liked the least and felt like, this is, and they would do it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it just became something where it was just a waste of time. It was a waste of my time. It was a waste of their time.
Right.
So then I stopped and started doing one visual design and saying, this is what I recommend.
Yeah.
And this is why. That became so much better than all the options and this is different than this. And it just became, it was just useless.
You have to become the expert.
That's one thing.
Right. You have to be the expert.
Exactly.
This is as your expert that you're hiring to do this.
Exactly.
This is what you should do.
Bingo. Yeah. It's this. It's not this or this or this. No, it's this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. For me, it usually breaks down between if I'm doing like a more creative project or just kind of a less creative project. If it's less creative, I'm happy to do whatever the client wants me to do for the most part. If it's something that I have spent a lot of creative energy behind and I have a reason for this scene or these shots in this order, and, they come back usually very late in the process, the producer or someone like that, and we'll say we want these changed. I have to decide how important I think that is to the project.
Got it.
And it's usually I'll pick 1 or 2 and be like, no, I'm not changing it. I'm like, here's the cut. If you guys want to change it in the end, you guys can do it. But I think it's this important. And I have a really good relationship with the producer to be able to say that.
There you go.
And not get fired.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Well, what are some of the worst things about freelancing, like that you've experienced so far?
Oh, one of the hardest things for me to get used to has been there are going to be periods where I don't have work. And so I just have to make sure I plan for that. And I have had to become comfortable with that. Because in the beginning, that was just very uncomfortable.
I don't think I'm comfortable with that still.
Yeah. It is tough. It's very tough. Yeah. That's been the toughest. So far, there's been a little bit of that, but not that much. But there's definitely points where you're like, I don't have anything scheduled. And I'm not sure where my next job's coming from. And then usually something will pop up in a week or two. But
right. Yeah.
But if it lasts too long,
Exactly. And I guess anything is possible, right? Like, there are definitely times where there's been global recessions or even a recession in the US and work goes way down. And I mean, the pandemic is something we both experienced recently.
Right.
Where I had clients just completely stop doing anything. I mean, their business was shut down. So they had nothing. But like you said, it kind of always seems to work out. I guess, it would be great if I could keep that in my mind.
I know. That's what I have to.
It'd be fine.
That's what I have to think. Like, things are probably going to work out. The pandemic has been interesting. Last year, I actually had extra jobs because of it. And I feel like this year I have less jobs because of it. As companies have adapted and kind of brought in-house and figured out how to do stuff. And companies like Zoom that we're using to record this have become so much more advanced in the last year. There are things that I would get hired for that they just don't need me for anymore.
Man, that scenario is something I've chased for a long time. Because with the web, but mainly I build and maintain websites. The tech for the websites continues to evolve and get better. And a lot of this is free. Like, you can install Drupal or WordPress or, some of these content management systems totally free.
Right.
And you get all of the advancements that they've been creating and adding to for the last 15 years right out of the box. Yeah. So before you had to build that from the ground up, it would cost thousands.
Right.
It's great for a consultant, it's like tons of work. Now you can get that with a single install that takes 5 minutes.
Right.
So, my focus has had to shift to either more and more creative things or more things that were highly customized for clients.
Yeah. So I think it's the same with video. Stuff has just become so accessible, so cheap, and there's so many people doing it now.
That is true.
That you kind of have to specialize. And the other thing that is probably a con for most people and can be for me sometimes is when I'm working on big projects, really like the biggest projects, it's usually a 7-day-a-week kind of job until I'm done. It's it's kind of working every day. I'm not doing like 18-hour days because that would be pointless because I just wouldn't get anything worthwhile done. But I'm working every day for, weeks.
I gotcha. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can see that. That hasn't really happened for me in a while. I think I've kind of tried to, I probably smooth things like that out. And I don't probably have as big of projects that you have, or they're slightly different.
Yeah.
But so if you're working 7 days a week, I mean, what is the effect on you mentally, emotionally? Is it just a draining kind of thing?
It's no, not really. It's interesting because usually it's so far anyway, it's been projects that I am totally into. And so my mind is totally, engulfed in it. I'm usually dreaming about it by about, 2 months into the edit.
Right.
And so it's stuff that I feel like I have to do. Like, I gotta work on it. Even if I didn't have to work 7 days a week, that's where my mind's going to be anyway, until I'm done with it.
So it's almost like it turns into an obsession.
Yeah. Yeah. I just can't. I've worked with people who can really compartmentalize things. Yeah. And work is over here and then they go home. I cannot do that. Especially with big projects that I'm into. Can't do it. I just tell my wife, I'm like, I'm going to be mentally checked out for the next month or two. Just so you know.
Find a good show on Netflix.
Yeah. So, I mean, work-wise, it's kind of fulfilling.
That's
but
great.
the rest of my life kind of suffers a little bit.
Right.
So
That's the challenge.
it's a trade-off.
That's it.
I imagine if it was a project I wasn't really into, it would be difficult.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
would
Like you had a big
probably,
deadline.
yeah, I'd probably feel like the burnout like I did working for the big organization.
Mm, yes.
But
And for what we want to do for the future, that's what I want to talk about next, like where we see ourselves going. For me, I see myself moving toward maybe a scenario where I've got multiple things that I'm doing at the same time. So continuing with my consulting, I've got that handful of clients that I've worked with generally for several years,
right.
and that's been working out well. But I want to add layers on top of that.
Yeah.
Stuff that I can do that feed more of my creative desire, things that allow me to just learn something completely new again. That's what I'm really interested in. So, I got into video in a large way because of your influence and a bunch of things that I see on YouTube all the time about starting YouTube
Right.
channels. And I got into photography as well from a couple of different photographers that I started following. So I just want to keep chasing those kinds of things. The challenge that I find though is flipping that into something that can bring an income. I think is just a really tough space.
Yes.
And maybe at the end it doesn't have to,
Yeah.
but it sure would be that I think would fulfill a little bit more of, wanting to have multiple streams of revenue
I have a friend who's
from several
doing that
places.
kind of. Like
Oh
she's
yeah.
she's coming from the video side,
Hmm.
and she's building a business where she helps other female entrepreneurs incorporate video into their business.
Ah.
So she's trying to work like the multiple passive income as well as being like a consultant.
Mm.
And it's a lot of work, I think, to build that,
It is
to
completely.
turn it into a money kind of making
Yeah.
operation. It's tough because
Yes.
I'm kind of trying the same thing. There's a couple of projects that I'm starting that I hope can maybe turn into some passive income, but I'm not sure, like a YouTube series, maybe a behind the scenes / how to series.
Mm.
Yeah, but I'm not I'm not quite sure how to take the next step. I know how to make the content, but to turn
Right.
that content into more is where I need to figure things out a little bit.
And I think it takes a lot of experimentation and trying different things, but specifically for YouTube, I follow these creators who that's like their 70-hour a week focus
Yeah.
is just creating content and then marketing it and all of that stuff.
Right. And as they get bigger, a lot of them have teams.
Correct.
Running
Yeah,
it.
you can
Yeah.
hire once you start. Yep. So it is, they are building a small brand. There's no doubt, like a
Hmm.
channel like that. But it's like a lot of work without any kind of compensation in the beginning. And I think that's the barrier that really is a challenge to jump over. You
Yeah.
have to have, I don't know. And I think and maybe I've often thought if is it the content? Is it the personality? Is it the combination?
Right.
What's the secret sauce of all of that stuff? Because some people seem like they were just born to be in front of a camera.
Totally. But
For
there are
me,
other
it's
popular
not that
people.
way.
Yeah, there's people on YouTube that I follow that clearly were not born to be in front of the camera, but they've found their little niche audience.
That's true. Yeah, it's the thousand true fans philosophy.
Yeah.
Like all you need is 1,000 true fans to sustain any kind of endeavor.
Exactly.
And make a small business out of it.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to find our 2,000, I guess. 2,000 fans.
That's right.
And make a real go of it. I've seen a couple of people be able to transition, I think, into that kind of space.
Oh yeah.
Where it's not a huge following, but it's just enough that they can kind of get backing for whatever project they're working on.
Yeah.
And they usually work the Patreon angle, where they're putting out some stuff on YouTube, but most of their stuff is behind a paywall.
Yep. The YouTube is the teaser.
Right.
The Patreon is where you get all of the content, and for a fee, of course.
Yeah.
Subscription.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and it works. I mean, it's a model that people are using and successfully doing.
Yeah.
You just have to prove that you've got something that people would like to listen to, or you've got content or information, ideas that are worth sharing, and you can go get your following.
One day.
That's the hard part. That's what I'm working on.
That's the dream. Yeah.
That's the dream. Well, and for me, I've started creating videos around this construction project. I'm building a home for myself, and the 3 goals that I have are, well, one of them is to build it without a mortgage. All that means is
you got a budget.
I either have a lot of money to do it, and that's not true, or I do a lot of it myself. And so I've chosen the latter. And so now this is like a massive project for me to learn all of this stuff and then execute on it. And I thought, what a great YouTube series this would make.
Totally.
So I don't know what could come of that, but that's been something that I thought, even if it doesn't make anything, the experience of doing it, like, as if I made 100 videos, let's say that turned into 100 YouTube videos,
right?
I would have some level of skill after 100 published videos on YouTube.
Totally.
That I think would be marketable, or would produce something of value.
Yeah, I think so. And I would guess that you would get a decent following too if you did that journey on YouTube by the time you were done.
Yep.
If there was like a consistent flow of videos.
The consistency.
Overarching kind of story that people can follow. Yeah. Once they get hooked, once you find enough people who like you on camera, that would totally work. Yeah.
Man, where are those people?
I know, right? Well, we've got 6 of them, right? We've got 6 on this channel.
So if you're listening now and you haven't subscribed,
that's right.
You know what to do.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. To all of our subscribers, thank you so much for subscribing. Yes. And please comment and like or dislike below.
That's true. I'll take a dislike.
Yeah, either way. If it's no good,
first one who dislikes and tells us gets nothing but congratulations.
Right, yeah. I've always learned the most from people telling me what was wrong with my work.
I love it.
All right, till next week.
I'm Stefan.
I'm Mike.
And this is The Bacon Show. See ya!